The African American Legend series highlights the accomplishments of blacks in areas as varied as politics, sports, aviation, business, literature, and entertainment. We will explore how African Americans have succeeded in areas where they'd been previously excluded because of segregation, racism, and lack of opportunity. I'm your host, Dr. Roscoe C. Brown, Jr., and joining us on today's program is Terrie Williams, who's the president of the Terrie Williams Agency, one who's done so much to bring the accomplishments of African Americans, others to the public. And Terrie, glad to have you with us today on African American Legends.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for asking me.
How's it feel to be in the other seat? You're always getting somebody else on television, and here you are.
Oh boy, I'm still not used to it. It's a very strange feeling because, yeah, my job is to get other people in this chair, and so I'm very shy. People don't really know that, but I am.
Well, I know you for a long time, and I've admired you, and I think you've done a tremendous thing in your career. I know something about your career with Essence and with the various agencies that you work with. How did you really decide to go in and form the Terrie Williams Agency?
Well, I'm a social worker by training, and I was counseling terminally ill patients and their families, and found the work to be very depressing. Used to take a lot of that home with me, and I decided that I wanted to do something that would help people, but that was a more uplifting kind of work for me to do. And so I actually picked up a copy of the Amsterdam News one day and saw an article about a public relations course being taught at the Y, and I decided I was going to take that course, and it whet my appetite, so I took another course. Then I started doing a lot of volunteer work so that I could get hands-on experience and could make the transition from social work to public relations. And that's what I decided I wanted to do.
I must admit, as you were talking, there's a relationship between social work and public relations.
Oh, very much.
You're trying to help people modify their image of themselves in social work, and in public relations, you're trying to help the public modify or form the image of the person you represent.
Yeah, that's true. And I would actually say that my training as a social worker was very, very beneficial in terms of working with the kinds of personalities that I worked with. You know, I started my company 11 years ago with Eddie Murphy and Miles Davis as my first two clients. And the challenge is when you work with talent, you have to get them to do the things that you know that they need to do that are in their best interest, but they sometimes don't see that. So you have to try to figure out how to present it to them in a way that will make them get it, and then you get to achieve your goals.
See, your career is a little easier now because you have a rep, and people know that they ought to listen to Terrie Williams because she'll get you on the right track. But I remember when you started, and some of the people you work with are kind of difficult people, and to get their attention, you had to be self-effacing on your own, and you had to identify with their needs. As we both know, celebrities and famous people have their own insecurities, and some of them are shy, some of them are brash, some of them want to listen, and some of them don't. And you have to be like a quarterback. You have to determine which strategy you're going to use in order to get them to make the best presentation.
Absolutely. And I think the key thing to being successful in this business, but you don't know this right away, is that you can only do what you can do, what someone will allow you to do. And you give them your best advice. You know, if you do this, this will happen. If you do that, that will happen. And let them make their own decision. And then you just clean up the mess afterwards when they don't make the right decision. You know?
Well, I think there's a certain amount of that. You and I both know a number of celebrities, and each one of them is a person. Each one of them has a persona that they present. The persona they present to you and me may be different than the persona that they present to the general public. And part of this business and this mega bucks thing is what you are to the public is really what makes you bucks.
That's right.
Unless you happen to have a tremendous, even if you have a tremendous talent, you still have an image. You know, they have this thing that they do on the television station. They rate the images of various performers, and the ones that have a higher image but maybe not quite as much talent are in more demand frequently than the ones who have a great deal of talent.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right about that. I think, I mean, you raise an interesting point. I mean, I think that a lot of times really in life, everything is smoke and mirrors because a lot of times the image that you do see is rarely what that person is like, you know, the side that you and I get to see. And the challenge, I think, in this business is to try to make sure that you don't really compromise that person, because if you try to do something or direct that person in a way that is not true to who they are, that will surface, and then you have problems.
You see that with particularly famous people working in charity events. Sometimes they really identify with the cause and really get into it. Some other times they're so stiff and vacuous that they say, well, why am I doing this?
Right.
And of course now people get paid for that. I mean, in the old days when you went up to speak about an agency or an organization, it was good work. Now many performers get paid for participating in various social action events.
Yeah, that's true. But I think that generally more and more people, I'm finding, that they really, really understand that to use their name, their power, their clout, that they can really affect change in people's lives. I mean, you think about, I'm just thinking about it fresh in my mind because Johnny Cochran, who's a friend and client, recently did some work with Habitat for Humanity. And you think about the reason that Habitat for Humanity has such a public face is because of Jimmy Carter. You know,
That's right.
he used who he was to bring attention to a cause that is just really important to so many people in this country.
Yeah, that's true. As you know, I was president of Bronx Community College for 16 years. And during my tenure, I raised more money for the college than any community college in the country. And basically, that was because I was Roscoe Brown, Tuskegee Airmen, et cetera.
That's right.
And there is some spillover between your generic reputation and the particular thing that you work with. For example, you work with Miles Davis, who was reputed to be one of the more difficult people to work with. On the other hand, Miles was a super person, just a super person in terms of his sensitivity.
You're absolutely right. He was a wonderful human being, and many people would not say that because he played with his back to the audience. And but for everybody that you meet, everyone's got multifaceted aspects of their personality, you know. So.
And part of your job is to bring that out to the public.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Bring it out to the public. Now, when you get a client, it's almost like doing a workup as a physician. You're going to do this or this or this or this.
Yeah.
What's the first thing you look at when you
I try to get a sense of who the person is, what kinds of things they enjoy during their quiet time, what do they have, what challenges them, what kinds of, perhaps, you know, what does their family look like in terms of what they do, whether or not a particular illness has affected someone in their family, because all of that helps to give a picture, to try to help this celebrity identify a cause that they perhaps might want to become involved in. So I just try to get a look at the whole person, you know, what turns them on, and then I can then try to figure out how to get certain kinds of articles written about them that will introduce the public to various sides of them. Because a lot of times you pick up the paper and you see that someone is interested in a particular cause or that they like a certain product, and if someone, say from Moet and Chandon, they read that such and such a person really loves champagne, well then maybe in reading about that they might decide that they would like that person to endorse their product. So that's how that works. And if we do our job as public relations professionals, if we do our job really well, then the person can begin to command more money in terms of endorsements and appearances and that kind of thing.
Of course, you use the word public relations. The public is the audience you're trying to reach.
That's
and
correct.
Relations has to do with the process that you go through for doing that.
For sure.
Many social agencies and advocacy agencies now, they did before, but more so now, are using public relations to get their cause across. Have you found it that much different in working with an agency to get a cause across as working with an individual?
I think that the working with individuals to get generally the cause or the organization known is what's very, very effective, because people are immediately drawn to celebrity. They just are. And it really does make all the difference in the world in terms of putting a face on the cause. You know, you'll have people like Alonzo Mourning, who plays with the Miami Heat, or Victoria Rowell, the actress, both of whom were foster children. And so they have devoted a lot of their time and attention to that particular cause. So say if I were the head of a particular organization, I would be reading everything that I could so that I would get a sense of what well-known people out there had a particular affinity for a specific cause, because it makes them more apt to be involved.
Of course, you mentioned something that's very important. It's akin to what we professionally call research. You said you would read and find out as much as you can about a particular individual. And I imagine you must subscribe to 50 newspapers and publications a day. And you probably have to use the internet or somebody to find out what's happening with all of them.
I think that's one of the keys to being successful, not just in public relations, but just in business and in life, is that it's really important to know what's going on in the world, who's doing what with whom, what kinds of connections can you make between people and organizations. I get about 5 newspapers a day. You know, in the morning, I go through my papers by 8:30 in the morning. Got to know. It's interesting to note how different news outlets cover the same topic. And there are several magazines and that we subscribe to. Got to be current. And sometimes reading the newspaper in the morning before the day begins can give you an edge over somebody else. You're getting ready to have a new business meeting and you've read something in the paper that is just what that particular client or prospective client needed to know about.
Particularly if that client is going to merge with some big European partner and nobody else knows about it until 10 o'clock in the morning.
Absolutely.
That gives you an edge. Oh, how did you know that?
Absolutely.
And that really is part of the success. Now, in your book, The Personal Touch, I think you call it The Personal Touch, the business bestseller. Now, I read the book, and I'm a fast reader, but I went back and read a couple of things because I said, gee, this is damn good common sense. But on the other hand, as a fellow said, common sense ain't so common.
I was just getting ready to say that, Roscoe, yes.
In the back of the book, and the book, you give about 40 different tips for how to relate to your client, how to relate to your business, how to advance your business. And one thing you just mentioned, you read the newspaper.
Yeah.
You are aware of what's going on. And not only do you just read the theater section, you read the business section, the political section, the sports section.
I have developed the art of skimming because I clearly can't sit there and like read everything. I'll tear out other things to read later. But yeah, reading, excuse me, newspapers, something, and you mentioned common sense. Yeah, I think there's nothing revolutionary about what I've said. I think that many people have learned just good home training, but we've forgotten about those little things. Saying thank you to someone when they do something for you. People don't have to do anything for you. 5 people go for a job interview. They have pretty much the same skills. One person sends a thank you note to the interviewer. If everything else is equal, that's the person the person who wrote the thank you note is the person who's going to get the job. And just generally how you treat people, to treat everybody with respect and courtesy, because you never know where the help is going to come from, where the job referral is going to come from. And sometimes people are amazingly rude or disrespectful to the administrative assistant or to the janitor in the building, who are every bit as important as that CEO that you might be chasing after. Never know in what disguise God is coming to you.
You know, the old expression is, be careful of the people you see going up, because you may see them coming down.
You do.
And so that's
absolutely
that's a very, very important aspect of life. I think in the African American community, generally, our children are taught to respect people regardless of status. They were taught to respect the man in the store or the person who cleans the building. At least that's the way it was when I grew up. I think it was where you grew up. And I think, and I work in a lot of youth organizations, as you know, many, or I would say most, of the leadership people in those organizations, voluntary or as well as professional, try to teach the respect about yes, sir, no, sir, please, thank you. Sometimes you get a little back talk. Why should I do this? I saw this on television. He didn't do that. But the fact is, just the sincerity with which you approach those young people, the way you look at them, the way you address them, means so much. And I know you do a lot of speaking to youth groups and so on. It's so important to
really
make that eye contact and to let them know that you really do care. And as a matter of fact, when I speak sometimes and some of the kids start turning around talking to each other, I'll just stop. I'll just stop.
No, that's right.
They say, hey,
That's
brother,
right.
sister, we talked about something. Now, just give us a little respect. And particularly among celebrities, the whole question of how the celebrity respects the audience, the press, the community, has a lot to do with the reputation of that celebrity.
That's for sure.
And I imagine...
And people will cut you slack, you know, if you have down times, bad movie, bad whatever, because they have come to like and respect you as a person. Yes, they love your work, but if you're known to be someone who is just generally a good person, it goes a long way toward just, you know, maintaining how people see you. Have longevity in the business, you know.
Can you invent good people?
No.
In other words, can you take someone who has kind of an attitude and with your tremendous skills, your social work background, invent them into being good people?
If the very core is good, then you can like work miracles. But if the very core isn't, it's totally ineffective because people can spot BS a mile away. So then it would not be. And you hit on a very important point not too long ago, and it was one of the things that I think is important to being successful in life is giving back, is going out and speaking to young people. I've talked with a lot of people, and I know that just in terms of watching you over the years, that it's an integral part of being successful in life is to give back. I mean, that's the way we have to keep the cycle going. There were people who came before us, and that's how we say thank you to those people, by doing it for somebody else. I work with a lot of at-risk youth, and I know all they need is a chance. And it's up to those of us who are blessed. We have a responsibility to pass it on and to spend time with young people.
I know many of your clients are celebrities and well-known people, writers, actors, sports people, etc. What about some of the social agencies that we have in our community? Is it different in terms of the way in which you work in public relations with a social agency, let's say the Urban League, I don't know whether it's a client of yours, as against repping a music star? Is it different, and if so, how is it different?
Well, I think you still have to, as you mentioned, research. You still want to get to the core of who the person is, or what the organization is about. Are there people that the organization has served who have gone on to do really incredible things? Then those are people that can help you to tell the story about your organization. But the key thing is to really find out who that person is, who that organization is, what makes them different, unique, special from other organizations who do what they do. And that's, I think, the key to being successful in terms of promoting an organization or individual. Why is that particular organization special? And it starts from there. Once you're able to identify those factors, then you are better able to package a story and go out and try to get some interest in it. And a lot of work that is done with, say, social service agencies is helping them to identify, again, a well-known person who would help bring attention to the organization. That's why you look for spokespeople for your organizations. That's why you look for a prestigious board of directors, people who have name value that will draw the general public in.
Well, one of the things I've observed with some particular African-American social agencies, as time changed, their mission hasn't changed to keep up with the time. Now, do you do work with agencies to help them define their mission, to clarify their mission? Because that's a key issue. When the organization has been down one particular track,
Yeah.
and the world changes. And now they're still collecting money or trying to collect money, but all of a sudden the climate that they're in, the discrimination or whatever, is different, and they need to reposition themselves. And I know so much of public relations is positioning.
Yes.
So how do you deal with an agency that's sort of out of step?
In the dark ages?
Yeah.
Well, unless they're open-minded, you just leave them there, you know.
In other words, the law of survival will take care of it. If they don't survive, they'll die.
That's right. That's absolutely right. You want to be current. And I think it's funny you mentioned that, because I sat in on a committee for the Air Force not too long ago, a public relations committee, and they are looking to target young people and more people of color. Yet the advisory committee was one woman, one person of color, who was me, and the rest were like all white guys. And I was saying to them, what is wrong with this picture?
Right,
you know?
right.
And so at least, they've made a start. And so I've encouraged them to get some, a more diverse group that will help them to meet their objectives.
See, you just made me feel very good. As you know, I'm an Air Force veteran at Tuskegee Airmen.
Yeah.
I've been saying for years that the Air Force needs to be more aggressive in reaching out to African American youth, because a little bit of history. During the Tuskegee Airmen, there were 993 pilots trained. 660 of them were single-engine fighter pilots, and 450 went overseas. Today, in the United States Air Force, if there are 200 African-American pilots, that's a lot. That means that something has gone wrong.
That's for sure.
When the war was out there and they needed us, they found us. Now that true enough, the Air Force is smaller, but there's absolutely no excuse for that tremendous drop-off. And I've been making that speech and the advocacy, and so now to hear that they have picked up the phone and called Terrie Williams, say, how can we promote the image of the Air Force? And the first thing you tell them is that the committee that is planning this can't be all white men.
Yeah, right.
You got
I mean, it seems so simple, that if you want to be really effective, it's important to have a well-rounded team. I mean, in looking at, my agency, I have 2 white people on my staff, but the black folks who are on my staff, I need for them to be well-rounded. I mean, I need for the entire team to be well-rounded. I need for the white folks to know what's going on in the black community, and the black folks to know what's going on in the world at large. That's the only way you can be truly effective. So, yeah, so we just take little baby steps, and one day they'll get it.
Well, I think we've done more than baby steps. You and I were involved politically in some of the movements, the Jackson campaigns and the campaigns for the senators, and we lost Carol Moseley Braun, but we'll get back a black senator sometime soon. We've been involved in those, and I know that there have been changes. I feel, I'm sure you feel, that the changes haven't been rapid enough. What kind of actions do you think people like you and myself and others in the advanced element of the African American community in terms of opportunity, what kind of changes do we need to do to get more of our people involved in the economic and political world at the higher levels?
I think that we have to utilize every opportunity that we can to try to spread the word, and you have to meet people where they are. I mean, I work with a lot of very wealthy, famous people, a lot of young guys who are in the NBA and in the NFL, and I know I have to move purposefully with them. Because I tried. I tried to tell them what good does it do to have like 25 cars in the driveway when you know what I'm saying?
When you only use one.
When you only use one, and there are people starving on the planet, and you could put a kid through school, or you could do this, or you could do that. I've gone there, and they told me I was trying to tell them what to do with their money. So, I realized, I realized that I have to meet them where they are, and I just never stopped speaking about it. I mean, I think that more of us need to be taken. young kids under our wing. I went to a luncheon not too long ago that was at Sony Music. It was hosted by LeBaron Taylor. And I took this 18-year-old kid from a group home in New York City. I've adopted this group home in Manhattan. And for him to be sitting in a room with 30 of New York's movers and shakers sitting at the table, Johnny Cochran was at the table. There were 4 people at the table, and he's looking how to use a fork and a knife and the stir in the iced tea. No, that's not a straw, it's a stir, you know. But for him to sit there and to hear Congressman John Lewis to speak about his struggles, it opens up a whole new world. And I was imagine if each one of us who had come to that luncheon had brought a young person with us. You know, that's all they need is like a chance, exposure.
You've heard the expression, each one teach one.
Absolutely.
This is an organization, Bob McCullough in Harlem as he heads that organization.
Yes.
And as you know, the 100 Black Men, of which I'm the past president, has an extensive mentoring program. So that's certainly one way where we can open those doors, and actually with some of these stars who may not have that level of consciousness, invite them along so that they can see the benefits of this.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I do that too, but I was thinking about you are right. That's what we have to do. If they come and they see, maybe they'll be touched and will be moved to do something.
As you know, I'm very interested in the schools, and the public schools in particular. And we work very hard to get people of reputation into the schools. And I must say, with the work the 100 Black Men has done at Roosevelt High School, for example, we've been very successful in having many, not only athletes, but people like yourself in the business community to speak to those young folks. So as we come to the close of the program, if you had advice to give to someone who wants to go into your business, what would the advice be?
I would say just to be current, to read everything that you can get your hands on, to persevere, and to treat everybody with respect and courtesy.
And have a personality like Terrie Williams. Today on African American Legends, we've been talking with Terrie Williams, who's the president of the Terrie Williams Agency. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Roscoe. It was fun.